snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is book number 7 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, which is A Crown of Swords. So I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and that's what I've been doing with most of the Wheel of Time books, and I really enjoyed this one. Even though a lot of people have said that 7, 8, 9, they're not the best books in the series, I quite enjoyed this. I didn't have an issue with it. Let's get into the review. This book took me so much less time than book number 6 in the series did. Book number 6 took me about a month or so to read and get through. This one took me less than a week, I believe. It was so quick. It's a lot shorter than the 6th book, which I think is why it was so easy to get through. And also the 8th book, which I'm currently reading, again, quite short. So I think that's why a lot of people have issues with them, because although they have good content and good bits, they don't have as much action because there just isn't as much page length. Book number 7 picks up basically straight away following on from the end of book number 6, which ends on a really big high, and there's a lot of drama that's just happened, lots of things that are really, really big and momentous in the series. After the amazing ending of book number 6, book number 7 kind of starts off a lot slower because it's kind of coming down from that high that we end on book 6. And so it doesn't start off with a load of action, it starts off quite slow, things are happening, but that's very typical of Robert Jordan's books. I always find that the beginnings of his books up until the halfway point are pretty slow, and after the halfway point things start to pick up, and by the end they kind of gather speed and things are getting really exciting, which I love. The first thing that I noticed about this story was that Elayne and Nynaeve kind of take centre stage in this one. They are very much the leading characters for a lot of this book, and Matt kind of accompanies them on their journey as well. They have a kind of mission that they need to go on in this story, and they are off hunting for a certain item, and Matt comes along with them in order to protect them. Matt's storyline really kind of takes off in this volume. The previous few volumes he hasn't had a massive part and things haven't really been going his way, so he's not been that great a character. But in this book he definitely develops. Matt definitely has the most character progression in this book, I would say, and I really enjoyed his storyline, especially as it got further in, because things really kind of turned a bit dramatic and took some funny turns, and that was a good thing. Up until this point I hadn't really loved him as a character. I liked certain aspects of him, like the jokiness and the funniness and the luck. I think he was just a fun character, but up until this point he wasn't one of my favourites, and in this book that opinion really got changed because of his unexpected storyline. Things kept on happening that I just wasn't anticipating, and it was just enjoyable to read about his parts because they were funny and humorous, and it was great. Elayne and Nynaeve kind of have a really interesting storyline where they are adventuring around Aviendha, which is a land that we haven't seen much of until this story, and they basically are trying to assert their new positions in this storyline, because in the previous book things happened to them that mean that they have gained an advantage, and in this book they're really trying to assert that advantage and make it known that this is their new position, this is who they are now. People need to start listening to them. They are kind of on a mission to gather leverage with the Aes Sedai and also with the Sea Folk, and I really enjoyed seeing the Sea Folk come into this. I thought they were interesting, and although they don't have a huge part, the bits that they do get involved in were interesting, and the bartering that went on between them was really nice. And just the way that they have their own prophecies and their own sort of culture is always a nice thing to see when we encounter a new culture in Jordan's world, because it is so expansive and huge. The good thing that I did find with Elayne's storyline is that because they have to face a lot of different challenges in order to complete their mission in this book, they basically encounter many different problems and they have to grow as characters. Nynaeve kind of did a lot of growing in the last book. She became a better character, whereas in this book Elayne starts to do the same. She starts to become more like the character we want her to be and less like the spoiled princess that she is in the previous books, because she is quite moany in some books, and although I do like her character, I do see that she can moan a lot and she can be a little bit irritating. In this book she starts to feel more like a queen. She starts to really understand her position and her people and just get what's going on around her a little bit more than she seems to in the previous books. And Nynaeve also has a small change of character when she meets someone who comes back from the earlier books who we haven't seen in a while. I won't say who, but it was great to see them back in the books. I really enjoyed their part, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that carries on and develops. That means their storyline together has changed a lot, so I'm excited for that. Moghedien and Egwenes both have sections within this storyline, as do Perrin and Aviendha. All of them are quite interesting in their own way. Their parts are basically there to show a small progression in their storylines, but they're not the key element of this book. This book is mostly about the adventure in Ebuda that's going on, and also about Rand and what he's doing. Moghedien encounters a rather rough and nasty group of people who we've met once before from a previous book. You'll probably know who I mean if you have read these books, because they are the bad guys, definite bad guys. And I don't like them. I don't like that group of people, so I liked seeing them come back into the story in the series. They are such easy characters to despise and loathe that I just think they add a whole new dimension, because although the whole story is about facing the Dark Lord and all that, these characters are a little bit more tangible than he is at the moment, and I think that to hate them is kind of easier and makes it more fun to have different bad guys and good guys and so on. And basically Moghedien encounters these people, and then she's faced with a rather sticky situation. She's already in a pretty sticky situation. She's not in the best place in the world right now, and things have not been going her way for a while, but now she is faced with the decision of whether to stay or go, and whether to denounce her title or not, and things like that. So quite major decisions, but nothing that really affects the overall storyline massively. Then we have Egwene, who is still adjusting to her new position. She takes on a leadership role in the last book, and she has to try and assert her dominance over all the people around her, because she again is surrounded by people who are not quite as believing of her capability as she is. She has to figure out a lot of things, and she basically just continues to grow from book 6 into book 7. She just continues to grow into her position and assert her authority. That's her major role. Aviendha is following along with Mat and Nynaeve and Elayne. Although we do get to see her point of view at a small section of this book, we don't get to see much. We do follow her storyline from the points of views of the others. I really loved her point of view, even though it was quite short, because she has such a different perspective on the world and on the customs that the Wetlanders have and the things that they do. I thought she was a great character from the start, and I absolutely love the feistiness of her, and just the way she considers things and thinks about things is so vastly different that it makes it so interesting. I think she's a great character. I really like her. She's one of my favourites, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing more from her point of view in the future books. Perrin in this story doesn't get anywhere near the same amount of limelight as he did in the previous book. In the previous book he has a big shining moment right at the end, which is really great, and he really shows his character and how great he can be. In this book, not so much. He kind of is present at the start and then kind of vanishes and goes away from the other main characters in the storyline to his own adventure again, which means that he only kind of met up with them for one book and then vanished again, which I didn't really like. I kind of wanted them to stay together a little bit more. Now reading book number 8, I see why that happened. I just feel like this book was a real letdown for Perrin. Perrin's storyline took some bad turns when he couldn't figure out how to please Fael, and he was very focused on his love life rather than all of the craziness of the world of the Wheel of Time, which is quite insane at the moment. There's so many things going on and so much to keep track of, but he's just kind of focused on this one narrow-minded path of him and Fael, which is a little bit irritating because he is one of the main characters and he should be a little bit more focused on the real priorities of saving the world and that sort of thing. However, I do think that his storyline has picked up a bit in book number 8, so I'm hopeful that that will continue as the series goes along. In this book as well, Rand, who is obviously the main character, becomes a kind of muddled character because he gets a little bit confused over what is going on between him and Lews Therin. He's got a lot of personality switches, he's got a lot of mood swings. At first he's a leader, then he's reduced to embarrassment, next he has anger, and then finally he's got courage. All sorts of things are going through the personality and changing it and making him into a stronger but also a kind of rougher, scarier version of Rand. He's not the same farm boy that we picked up in the first book. He has to basically battle with himself, and he feels like some part of him has slipped away in this storyline, and he's trying to battle to kind of overcome that and become his own person with or without this part of him. He also has to take on more of the Forsaken, which is never a simple task. At the end of the story, he does become back to the Rand that we all love, and who is a kind of very courageous, brave and confident lead character. So he has a few hiccups along the way, but he does then go back to being a great character by the end. Min is another character that I just wanted to mention. She is mixed in with Rand's storyline in this story, and it's great to see her back in the story, back in the real flow of everything. She helps us a lot to see more of Rand's gentle side, more of his real personality, because at times he can feel quite distant and quite high up, whereas the rest of the characters are a little bit more approachable, believable and down to earth. But she really brings out his gentle side, his caring side, and the two of them have a lot of funny quips together and sarcasm, and it's a very, very playful relationship that they have. Overall, I wouldn't say that this was as good as book number 6, but it wasn't a far way off book 6. It was just the shorter length and the lack of a huge battle or anything like that. It was good in places. There were places I was laughing out loud. It's just a great instalment. The whole series is fantastic, and I did end up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Even though it's not as good as book 6, it's still 100% worth the read, and I would highly recommend this. So I would love to know what you guys think of this series. If you have any thoughts on book number 7 specifically, or on just Wheel of Time in general, let me know them down below, because I love chatting to you guys about them. I'm really enjoying this world, and I'm really hoping that I will continue to read these books as quickly as I've been getting through the last one and book number 8, because I'm about halfway through that as well, I think. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna just kind of dive into this series and love it for the next few months, and then be finished up with it, which would be so, so cool. So let me know any of your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the